Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen DeNoon. You guys are watching Israeli News Live. Put a little comment in there. I hope everybody's got their seatbelt on. We're about to go for a ride. This is a very serious topic here tonight. We're going to be looking, of course, at Israel's strike in Syria. And of course, as the title, kind of very difficult to figure out how to actually make this title, because I'm going to share with you some of the clip from Siman Tov, who was on Israeli News Live via phone interview a few weeks back, and where he talks about what the plan is for a peace process and Israel with no borders. And it's very obvious what's happening right now, that the latest strikes in Israel is part of this plan. And I think it's very important for the listeners to know tonight that this goes beyond just the state of Israel. There is a lot bigger players involved in this. We are going to also be playing a little bit of Sergey Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, his interview with Stephen on Hard Talk, his Hard Talk program. We got the unedited version of this, and it is circulating on Twitter. Vanessa Beeley posted this up here so we could see it. I don't think she was the original one to post it, but very interesting, some of the things that are stated there. It really helps to understand facts a lot better. So, you know, I really think this is something that's going to be a blessing to all of you guys tonight. I want to take my time and really share these things with you. If you've got any friends that want to join, let them know we're live right now. Of course, this will air on YouTube. It just automatically uploads afterwards. If it's a blessing to you, definitely give it a thumbs up as we go along here. And let's just get right into it. And also, my wife said that some people were commenting as far as wanting to be able to support the work that we do here. They're new, they didn't know how to do that. It is very easy. Just go to IsraeliNewsLive.org. You can donate there. Our address doesn't appear on the live broadcast, but that's all right. You can always, we do have an address. Look at some of the older videos there. At the end of the videos there, we have our address in the United States as well as in Europe that you can help if you'd like to help. We appreciate that very much. Anyway, blessings to all of you that are watching. It is kind of nice to get to see you guys commenting there, but I have to pay more attention to what's going on. So I need to really get more focused here, and so that we can get right into this broadcast tonight. As you guys already know, we brought it out this morning on the broadcast. I spoke about coming on tonight at 10 p.m. Our time here, but we are early. And I'm early mainly because there's just so much going on and a lot to cover, and we need to get right into it. Syrian air defenses repelled missile strikes targeting 2 air bases, according to the media. That's RT is speaking about the media there in Syria. That was from last night. And by the way, I will stay up late tonight just to try to get an idea of what's going on. Because it seems like every time I go to sleep here, then Israel's already struck again, or the United States has struck, or somebody has struck something else inside of Syria. But we want to look at why this is happening and try to uncover what's really going on. And is it going to happen again? Yes. We're going to also be looking at the chemical weapons attack, because Sergey Lavrov, in the interview with Stephen on Hard Talk, is really grilled about that issue, and his answers, well, I'm sure they didn't air everything he said, but anyway, very interesting. So anyway, the Syrian air defense systems have downed missiles after what have been a new Israeli strike, according to media reports. The attacks reportedly targeted the Sharat airbase in Homs province and Al-Damar base northeast of Damascus. Up to 10 missiles were destroyed by the Syrian armed forces. The military source told Sputnik. The Syrian air defense manages to intercept some of the projectiles, according to the Sana reporter. Meanwhile, the Al Mayadeen news outlet is claiming that 6 missiles were downed on their way to Sharat, as well as 3 others targeting the military airfield near Damascus. The strike caused no physical damage or casualties, according to Al Mayadeen. Now, According to the early reports we've seen this morning, there were Russian advisors at the base there to the east of Damascus, because this was after this incident that they were dealing with in eastern Ghouta, and one reason why they actually had people there. Yahoo News is reporting that Russia cannot limit Israel's actions in Syria. That's according to Mr. Lieberman. And there's a lot of concern, but I think it's important to look at something here that the defense minister of Israel actually states here, because he also shows the close relationship between Israel and that of Russia, unlike some people that go around saying that, oh, Russia's the big bad boogeyman and they're the ones that are going to blow Israel up and those type things there. But it says here that Israel will not accept limitations on its actions in Syria from Russia or any other country. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said Monday, a week after a raid attributed to the Jewish state. We will maintain a total freedom of action. We will not accept any limitation when it comes to the defense of our security interests, Lieberman said in a video interview with a Walla News site in response to a question on Russian criticism of the recent strike. But we do not want, as he says here, to provoke the Russians. We have an open line of communication at the level of officers. The Russians understand us and the fact that for years we have managed to avoid friction with them in Syria. Lieberman again accused Israel's main enemy, Iran, of seeking entrench itself militarily in neighboring Syria and threaten his country. Now, here's where the issues are all coming right down. From an outset, I would probably say I understand Israel's actions. But let me say that with caution. You have to know what's really going on to get a better idea of the bigger picture here. And that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. We need to know what's really going on. And the interview with Siman Tov that we had, who is an Israeli born. He was born in Israel. Siman Tov is probably about 65 years old. He is a believer. He's actually, became a Christian later in life. Very independent. I don't think he is of any organization, but he's a good friend. And Siman Tov really tells it like it is. One of the things he shared with us when we were on the broadcast last, he said, I believe that Netanyahu is God's man. And he didn't, as he brought it out, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but like he said, it may not be for the good, but he said he's the man that will cause all the evil to come upon Israel. And he said that's the only way to drive Israel to her knees. So he even shared with me that what Netanyahu will cause will bring about the war that will kill 2/3 of the Jews in Israel. That's very sombering, very sombering. And Siman Tov came on right during the peak of the different accusations against Prime Minister Netanyahu, still ongoing investigations there with him for corruption in Israel. I know some people make light of it, just as, over cigars, expensive wine, things like that, are gifts that he's received. But even since the interview with Siman Tov, it's gotten much broader in affecting the largest, Bezik, the largest internet provider in Israel. Favorable coverage, news issues, all kinds of things like that. And in my opinion, too, I have to say, Prime Minister Netanyahu has not done anything more than what Pope Francis has done when he met with the head of Google. And then the next thing you know, all the favorable coverage on the Vatican is what appears at the top of the Google search engines now. And all the negative things about the Vatican are very difficult to find, if you can find them at all. So Prime Minister Netanyahu has done nothing different than the Pope of Rome has. Interesting, isn't it? Or that of the United States, in fact. But what's really going on is much deeper. And a lot of times people look at Israel and they say, well, Israel is the cause of all the woes in the world. And that's not necessarily true. The Jewish people have returned home to their homeland for the purpose of recognizing their Messiah, to see their Messiah. I do believe that. But as far as the government itself, the government is not the representation of the true Jewish people that have returned home to see the Messiah. Although the people that have returned home, naturally, they vote, they have put the government into power. I understand that, I agree with that. But you have to remember, for those that believe that Yeshua is the Messiah himself, then we would have to take it in regards to Israel then is still blind to who the Messiah is. So they're still prone to make the mistakes that they're making. But then again, so is the United States, and they're supposed to be a Christian nation. And the Christians have put Donald Trump into power and make some of the mistakes ever on planet Earth now. We're killing more people in the name of God than any nation on the planet. I mean, this is how terrible it is. And you know, and guys, you know, I mean, all right, let's get into the facts of what's going on here. Now, Russia, Sputnik has brought out the article here. Russia's S-300 in Syria will curb Israel's from operating against Iran, according to the researcher there. There is a possibility that Russia is going to give the Syrian government the S-300 missile defense shield. They have not done it as of yet. Russia operates the S-300 and S-400 inside of Syria. And as long as Russia has had control of that, Israel has been able to fly unimpeded because of the close relationship that Russia has with Israel. That doesn't mean that Iran wouldn't retaliate when Israel is making the strikes, and Iran has promised that they will retaliate. Their head of their defense department has said that they are going to retaliate against Israel at their time and at their choosing. Well, it seems to me that this regional plan is definitely underway. This is exactly what they needed to do. All right, this is exactly what they have to do. Israel's part in this regional plan, I believe, is to provoke Iran into a battle. President Trump has said he's going to leave Syria once again. Anytime President Trump says he's going to leave Syria or he believes that Assad should stay in power, that should send up red flags to anybody and everybody. It's just not going to happen. That should tell you that what President Trump is doing is he is pandering to the evangelical community that has put him into power. And, you know, and granted, listen to me, I'm not against the people that did. You know, I mean, let's look at the fact. What did we have for? Well, she would have already blown up the entire Middle East for sure, and got into a war with Russia immediately. You had the old guy there. Can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he goes and meets with the Pope, and so you know he definitely wasn't a good choice either. You know, then you had Donald Trump. And in the beginning, when Donald Trump and his running mate were running for office, I was critical of him because his choice for vice president, being a former Catholic, I'm like, this is not a good situation. All right, I realize that he became an evangelical, but what is the difference? We've already found that out. What's the difference? Trying to come on with the latest events here. I want you to hear, though, what he says here. Make sure you let me know if you can hear what he's saying. It's very important. Let's listen in.
Syrian state or a regional surrender? Because right now there are some very dramatic changes taking place in relationship between Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. Nations that have sought Israel's destruction over and over for the last 50 years, 70 years, are now actually, Israel is using jet fighters in northern Egypt, fighting ISIS there alongside of the Egyptian forces. And they've had bombed 5 years with the intent of attacking Iran. There are some very, very powerful, real changes taking place. And ultimately, I'm convinced that the Holy Spirit showed me something a little over a year ago. Spoke to me and said that Isaiah 28:15 is actually being entered into the last few years. And that verse says, Israel has entered into a covenant with death and hell and have made lies her refuge.
Wow.
And
That's amazing, Siman. That is amazing to hear that. Now, the thing is, as Siman Tov is talking about here, let me close out. I'm going to have to close out some of these windows that I have open here. Maybe it'll help because I hear some people are saying that we're having a buffering issue there. Siman Tov was saying here that there is a regional power. Now, if you remember, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about a one-state solution. And what Siman Tov talks about in this interview here is that they're talking about an Israel with no borders. And who is the Gulf states that are behind working with the United States to make all this happen? Well, the reason why Iran has to go down, in their view, I should say, I don't want to say that I agree with this, but in their view, is because Iran is an obstacle to this new peace initiative that is being brokered by the United States, and I believe the Vatican is very much behind it. Great Britain and France, all part of this as well. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of your Gulf states, 7 Gulf states, are in support of this new peace initiative. And it will be, let me see if I can pull this back where Siman actually says that part of it there. Let's try.
before that, is done exactly that. The bill, the one bill, and I forget the member of Knesset that introduced, he used his power as prime minister to block it from coming into that committee. So if it doesn't go through the committee, it will never make it to the floor of Knesset where it can be voted on. He's been doing that, and not just now, he's been doing it for years. Every time, because there are many members of Knesset are convinced this is the time right now because of the favor we have with the Trump administration to move ahead and declare sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and then ultimately over Jerusalem. And he's, by his actions, is preventing that from even making it to the floor for votes. He has an agenda, it's very real. And it's, right now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that that agenda, some people actually think that it's because of his great strategy that he's trying, but that's been talked about for 20 years now. Not just with him, with other prime ministers. The truth is he is in the process of making alignment with regionally with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. And it's going to, so in some way or form, is going to require the surrender of land in what we call Israel. And that's why, about a year ago, not quite a year ago, I wrote a little article, I have a little newsletter I send out periodically. And the title of it was Palestinian State or a Regional Surrender. Because right now there are some very dramatically changes taking place in relationship between Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. Nations that have sought Israel's destruction over and over for the last 50 years, 70 years, are now actually, Israel is using jet fighters in northern Egypt fighting up.
So as you can see, a regional surrender is what Siman Tov says. That's exactly what they're doing. And they're working with these different Arabic states. Now Egypt, how did they get Egypt to come on board? Well, they just overthrow the government and put the government in they want. How did they get Iraq to come on board? Overthrow the government and get the government they put in place to come on board. The Saudis have come on board anyway. So this is what's really going on. Now, the thing is, the ones that are not on board, Syria, Iran, Lebanon, they're going to take them all out. And I think this has a lot more to do with what General Wesley Clark, when he spoke about these nations that they were going to destroy and overthrow, which started with Iraq. Then it was supposed to be Syria, which pretty much has followed into that path. You had Lebanon, Iran, Libya. I don't think Libya probably had anything to do with that particular issue there, but all these Middle Eastern states there are being toppled in order for them to bring about this new regional power. Now, Siman Tov in this interview also shares something with us that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been doing that just shocked me to begin with. He said many of the older people in Israel had bought land that the Prime Minister has been giving their land away, exchanging their land for whatever he's getting out of it, I don't know, surrendering their land. And he said all this talk about building and stuff that the Prime Minister promises, he said never comes to fruition anyway. So there's a much bigger thing going on in the background. And I know many people would automatically think the Greater Israeli Project. I would almost want to call it the Greater Vatican Project myself, because after all, it is a revived Babylonian empire. They are trying to take over from the Euphrates River all the way to the Nile River. And it's just a matter of time. And, you know, and I would have to say this, you know, keep in mind, when I speak about the Vatican, that doesn't mean the Catholic people are bad, by no means. It is just like in Israel. When I speak about the evils that the government is doing, it doesn't make Israelis bad. It doesn't make the people of Israel bad or the Jewish people bad. It's those that are running the system. The Bielski family that the movie Defiance was made after, I sat there with Michael Bielski, Tuvia Bielski's son, who was the movie was about him and his brother, Zeus and a Soil. But his father, Michael Bielski, shared with me at the beginning of the Israel becoming a nation in 1948, how that he was approached by those that were vying for power, which was the group that was on Ben Gurion and Rabin and this group here, that had already made a covenant with Rome, and they wanted Michael's father, Tuvia Bielski, knowing that he had fought bravely with the Russian partisans against the Nazi Germans there, and he'd rescued 1,200 Jews. They wanted him to fight for them. But the job they gave him was not to allow anyone to go take Jerusalem. Why? Because the Vatican had already worked out a deal with Moshe Sharif 2 years before Israel fought for the War of Independence. The Vatican would actually get Jerusalem. It was hands off. It became part of the UN Resolution 181. And that's exactly what they did. Now, Tuvia Bielski refused to go along with the idea of being willing to kill Jews to stop them. But what a difference between Tuvia Bielski and that of Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin ordered the attack. By the hand of Moshe Sharif and Ben Gurion, he ordered the attack on the Atalina that was with Menachem Begin's group that wanted to liberate Jerusalem. You see, there was one set of Jewish people that were returning home. They really believed that this was the promised land, that they believed that they should go there, they should be able to live there. After all, the British said they had set aside this land for the Jewish people. Interesting, isn't it? Let's keep moving here. I get my mind thinking, and it's a little different when you're recording live and when you're recording right there as you're going there. This is the bombshell of an interview that was carried out by BBC's Hard Talk. Stephen, I can't think of Stephen's last name on this, but he carries this out. Let's see, who is it? The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs released the unedited version of this. I'm going to blow it up a little bit bigger so you guys can see it on the screen behind you here. It is an amazing interview. I'm going to play about 3 different sections on here. I want to take the time for you guys to really be able to hear this. It is, to me, very important. It is very crucial for you to hear the things that Sergei Lavrov says in this. And then we're going to kind of look at some of the things that he's talking about in this interview, because he's being grilled about the chemical weapons attack, which, by the way, somebody made the comment in one of the videos when we were talking about the chemical weapons attack, that Russia was saying that this was a staged chemical weapons attack. And the BBC host kind of does Minister Lavrov there the same way that we get done in the comments. They say, oh, wait a minute now. Russia says there was no chemical weapons attack, but now they're saying it was staged. Well, which one is it? Well, you know, it didn't take a rocket scientist for me to understand what in the world they were talking about, you know, but everybody that wants to be with their little petty technical ways, they've got to act like they're intelligent when it doesn't really work very well. But he addresses that issue as well. And of course, what it comes down to being is, in other words, there was no chemical attack, but yes, they staged it to make it appear as if it was, but never using real chemical weapons. The other, well, I'll forget what the other issue is right now. Let's look at a couple of issues here. If I can remember where they start at, I'll try to start at the right spot there. Let me turn up the volume a little bit on this.
Files are coming. What do you make of that?
Well, I make of that the President of the United States writes his tweet.
And your response to those tweets is?
Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as you know. So we waited for this smart new, what else was there? Nice missiles to be used at the attack. And we calculated that 2/3 of them didn't reach the target because they were intercepted.
There's absolutely no evidence for that, is there?
Well, the military of the Russian Federation, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, presented its assessment, and it's available for the professional discussion.
We'll get back to the...
Now, that was a good one right there. And let me just, so you guys know what the question was being spoke about there, was Foreign Minister Lavrov's talking about President Trump's tweet that they're going to send in these new, smart, nice bombs, and Russia needs to be ready for it. And Foreign Minister Lavrov says 70% of those missiles were intercepted. And then Stephen comes back and makes the statement, well, there's really no proof for that, is there? But then he got put in his place. Foreign Minister Lavrov says that their defense ministry, head of their defense ministry, provided the assessment, and of course the assessment shows that indeed 70% were actually intercepted. So that, and as he said, that's ready for professional analysis. I thought that was a very good one there. Let me see if I can remember exactly where these other places are, some of these key points here.
What I did say was that the white helmets are known.
Let me back it up. That's another good one right there.
Representative of the OPCW, the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, says there is a deep concern that Russia has tampered with the evidence sites in Duma. Can you guarantee Russia has not tampered with them?
Well, yes, I can guarantee. But before you know, it's absolutely the same as was the logic of the resume on Salisbury. When we asked dozens of elections, questions, when requested common investigation, when requested our presence at the sample taking ceremony, if you wish. She said, no, we're not going to answer any question until Russia answers all our questions. The only question which was addressed to Russia, tell us how you did it. Was it ordered by Putin, the poisoning of this poor couple?
Before I keep going there, I apologize. What this one is here is about the Skripal case. And this is very interesting as well. So let's continue to listen to this one here.
Or this was the result of you losing your control over chemical arsenals. It's I believe, for any intelligent person, it's a situation which is absolutely obvious.
I'll get back to the script.
Back to Duma.
Yes, and listen, back to Duma and back to credibility. You have claimed that the event in Duma, first of all, didn't happen. Then the message seemed to change, and you said there was some sort of event, but it was stage managed and fabricated by what you called a Russophobic country.
The event did not take place. What did take place was the staged thing. It did not involve any chemical weapons.
And you believe Britain was behind the staging of a mock chemical weapons attack in Duma?
It's up to the the history, knows some experience during previous decades. What we do believe, and the special services, of course, can present information to the British Congress.
When you say there's irrefutable proof that it was faked, it was staged, you claim the white helmet humanitarian first responders were involved. Where is this irrefutable proof?
Well, the irrefutable proof is in the visiting of the place. And
where's your irrefutable proof that the white helmets backed by the British government have faked the whole thing? It's about credibility. Where's your credibility?
What I did say was that the white helmets are known to work only on the territories controlled by the opposition, including Jabhat al-Nusra. And the white helmets are known to be ringing the bell 1 year ago in Khan Sheikhoun, which was a fake from the beginning to the end. And the white helmets are known to be financed, among other countries, by the United Kingdom.
But so that doesn't represent irrefutable proof.
Wait a second. Irrefutable proof of what?
You said you had irrefutable proof that a Russophobic country, by which you meant Britain, had worked with these white helmets.
Why did you say that I meant Britain? Don't put your words into my mouth. I did say a country which is trying to lead the Russophobic campaign. Please quote me correctly. Otherwise it would be not very journalistic, I would say. So, speaking of very irrefutable facts, the Duma event was agreed to be investigated by OPCW inspectors. They moved to Lebanon. They were told by the Syrian government that they would be immediately issued visas as they come to the border. 7 hours later, the Duma and the Syrian territory was struck. What is the reason for going that way 1 day before the inspectors were about to arrive there?
Now, one point, let's make this clear as well, because the next thing you know, the West is accusing Russia of blocking OPCW members of getting to the chemical weapons site after, of course, this bombing took place. Now, Russia comes back and says, we're trying to clear it of the militants, because anyone that knows that after the U.S.-led strikes on Syria, then the ISIS, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, all the different militant groups then began to do a renewed push against the Syrian military, hoping to take advantage of this vacuum. And of course, that's what the vacuum was intended for to begin with, was to try to get leverage. So Russia and Syria had to once again bomb those jihadists that were near this area in order to stop them from getting in. But we had seen ourselves, the OPCW was actually supposed to go there that Saturday. And what was strange was, what was it, Theresa May or one of their colleagues there in the British government says that our chemical weapons inspectors are going to collect our evidence tomorrow. Well, then why bomb the place to begin with? If they're going to go collect the evidence, let them collect the evidence. Why do you got to go bomb everything into oblivion and not let anything get done? Listen more of this here.
The French, the British, and the American governments are right, and you are wrong. And President Assad continues to use chemical weapons, just as he did in Ghouta, where he killed up to 1,000 people in 2013, just as he did in Khan Sheikhoun last year, just as the US-led forces say he did in Douma. If they are right,
now, let's
and you are wrong, will you agree that President Assad must be punished?
All right, before we play Foreign Minister Lavrov's response to this is what's so absurd. Here he comes out, Stephen on BBC's Hard Talk, and he says that the Assad government has bombed in 2013 in eastern Ghouta, killing all the civilians there, and he did in Khan Sheikhoun the same thing. All right, I know you guys don't need any reminders, but let's just do it anyway. Aaron Erdem. You guys already know, Aaron Erdem. Some people are misappropriating the country's resources and betraying our trust, right? What else is he saying? Let me just find it for you real quick here. And because he says we wiretap, which also stated in the indictment, they wiretap. This was the ISIS militants that they had captured with the sarin gas. The Minister of Justice, Blvd, is also well aware of the details of this indictment because he himself went on air and made statements. But do you know what happened? In 1 week's time, that case was closed. The suspects were released and were allowed to leave Turkey by crossing over the Syrian border. Now I ask you, is that what you understand as justice? To set free transporting sarin gas? I am asking. One journalist states that this is much worse than all I have said before. Do you know who says the Republic of Turkey has dispatched ammunitions of the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization by orders of the Prime Minister serving at the time, Tayyip Erdogan? Let me tell you, Governor Adnan Hüseyin Avnikos, here are the records made by the governor here. If any of you would like to have a photocopy of it, okay, I'll give it to you. The governor states that he instructed the trucks to go there under the Prime Minister's order. Do you know what Irfan Fidan, the prosecutor arrested the journalist Kandindar, said? He said that Kandindar has not falsely defamed the government or the Prime Minister. He said that Kandindar merely disclosed a state secret, in other words, a fact. Now, Aaron Erdem goes on to say that the blood of the children that were killed in Syria by the sarin gas attack was on the hands of the Syrian government. And Aaron Erdem is a Turkish parliament member. And Stephen on the Hard Talk program here has enough audacity to sit there and still, just like him, Theresa May, Donald Trump, French President Macron, they all still have the audacity to blame President Bashar al-Assad for the 2013 sarin gas attack when Aaron Erdem, with a file that thick, when they had apprehended the ISIS militants carrying the sarin gas, that Seymour Hersh later uncovers the secret rat line. Actually, he's just one of the journalists. That under Hillary Clinton, they had smuggled the sarin gas with the CIA out of Libya through the rat line with Prime Minister Erdogan. and brought it through the Turkish border into Syria. And as Erdogan brought out when he came on RT News, the problem was his own government wouldn't listen. So finally he figures, okay, I'll put it out in the media. They put him in prison for it. He's out now, but he went to prison for making a stand for the truth. And the justice minister as well of Turkey knew about it and spoke about it as well. And then they always talk about, I don't care who it is, even on social media, you got so many people out here saying, oh, Assad's the bad guy, he's using chemical weapons. No, you know what it is? You got a greater project. Everybody calls it the Greater Israeli Project. I'm sure that there's some people there in the Vatican that probably give it that title because of the Rothschilds. And the CIA involved in smuggling the sarin gas along with Hillary Clinton behind all of this and sending that over into Syria through the Turkish government. The CIA and the Mossad are both loyalists to the Vatican. You don't believe it? Why don't you do a little research? Eric Phelps would be a good person for you to do a little listening to. That man will show you the connections that they have there to the Vatican and their loyalty to them. The Knights of Malta, the Freemasons, etc. Maybe some of these things I better be careful about saying because the NSA will just shut the broadcast down. That's why we started Patreon, to be able to bring out some of this stuff. But I kind of get really irritated when you have this type of irrefutable proof here, and this man sitting there saying the things that he's saying here. And I'm hoping, I think any minute now he's going to get into the part about where he actually says the blood of these children are on our hand. The weaponry that was sent to ISIS, that is, our public prosecutor Padan states that Kandahar, that's about the weapons, did not falsely defame the government. He disclosed fact, a state secret, that they're supplying the terrorists in there. The only difference is in America, we openly do it. Donald Trump actually says that Obama created ISIS. And then our military planes are still caught transporting ISIS militants back and forth different places. And then Trump goes on and he says that we have 100% defeated ISIS. Okay, yeah, now we're the taxi service for them. I'm just troubled by all this. Let's go back to Foreign Minister Lavrov in the interview here.
Look, you don't hear me. You don't listen to me. What I said, that the aggressive action was taken less than 24 hours before the international inspectors, including, by the way, American citizens as far as I understand, were to visit the place where the alleged chemical attack happened. The one last year event in Khan Sheikhoun happened on the 4th of April. Next morning, Rex Tillerson called me and said, why don't you tell the Syrian government that they must allow inspectors to the airbase from which the plane allegedly carrying chemical bomb took off. And we told them next morning that the permission was granted. They said, no, thank you. And they struck the next day. When we asked the OPCW to go there, they said it is not safe. And that they don't need this in any case, because the Brits and the French did have the samples. We asked the French and the Brits, can you explain how you got the samples from the place which seems to be not very safe? Then you have contacts with the white helmets who control the territory. And they said, this is a secret information. We have much more facts to be clarified.
We're going to pick this back up in just a moment here. But again, now we're dealing with Khan Sheikhoun in this interview, and I think that's very relevant as well. Let's just look at some issues about Khan Sheikhoun. All right. We have here this was Seymour Hersh's article here about Khan Sheikhoun, and it really exposes, there's Seymour Hersh right here, the investigative British journalist, no less, that really he has exposed some of the most incredible things that there is when it comes to the events in Syria and other things as well, including the Vietnam War, the massacres that have happened there, etc. I just encourage you to kind of look up some of the things that he's written about here. But Khan Shaykhun to begin with, how many of you guys remember? Let's look at some images here. What was it? This was Khan Shaykhun. This is the supposed site here of the bomb that the Syrians actually dropped. And you know what's interesting is how that right after that, we're talking about independent media comes out with all the intelligence information about this attack. Again, I question because I know the Mossad and the CIA work for the Vatican, and I know Mossad firsthand does. And I can tell you that from the United States too, and you guys can know that one there. All you have to do is look up Ronald Reagan when he had his particular, as they called it, the Holy Alliance, when he worked with Pope John Paul II in toppling over the former Soviet Union. If you ever looked at Ronald Reagan, when they looked in Time magazine, look at all the people that were on his cabinet. Every single one of them was Catholic. You ought to look that up sometime. Very interesting how that works. Anyway, look at this little pothole here. I mean, you might get a flat tire if you were to drive in it, right? All right, let's look. Now, according to what Russia had said, they had given the Syrians a guided missile, which they don't normally do. They were dealing with a 2-story cinder block building. For those of you in Europe, cinder block is like a, it's the really big, heavy blocks you guys use to build fences with. I've heard, go ahead and tell you guys that because it's a different kind of word in English here. And of course, this is what a Russian 500-pound bomb would do if it was dropped in the street right there. As you can see, the crater is deep enough to where the guy's shoulder looks like it's about even with his shoulder, that deep. You can see not only did it tear through the asphalt of the street, it tore through the concrete that was right there, and of course all the dirt and blew it out. All right. Now compare that nice 500-pound bomb with this silly-looking pothole in the road here, and call that Syrian strike of a chemical weapon of a 500-pound bomb. I don't think so. All right. It's ridiculous. To say the very least, it is absolutely ridiculous. Now, secondly, what else did we have on this whole issue here? Let me read to you a little bit about what Seymour Hersh had to say. And I know you guys have already seen this before, but let's just kind of recap it some more there. I want to blow it up. I want you guys to be able to see the print on the screen. All right? Make sure we're in the right place. The province of photos was not clear and no international observers have yet inspected the site. The immediate popular assumption worldwide was that this was a deliberate use of the nerve agent sarin authorized by President Bashar Assad of Syria. Trump endorsed that assumption by issuing a statement within hours of the attack describing Assad's heinous actions as being consequence of the Obama's administration's weakness and irresolution and addressing what he said was Syria's past use of chemical weapons. Past use? You know, President Trump, listen, you need some advisors. Go listen to Aaron Erdem, the man with a fistful of papers that would prove to you that Turkey and the CIA, which you said that Obama created ISIS, he was the one that tells you that it was the ISIS and your Obama guy with Hillary Clinton, your cousin, that took and shipped all this sarin gas in the country through Erdogan. And then you wonder why Erdogan right now, the president of Turkey, is out there once again, like he did when Trump bombed Syria after Khan Shaykhun. And you notice how Erdogan, you know, there was this big coup and U.S. was the bad guys now, and he hated the U.S. and he sided with Russia. But after Trump bombed Syria, their airfield with 50 missiles, he was out there like a cheerleader for Trump. Do it again, you can do more. Come on, Trump, come on, guys. Well, he's doing that all over again now. And he says, Assad must go. You know why he wants Assad to go? Because Erdogan knows that this this greater project, as Siman spoke about this, it would be Israel as a borderless country. And Siman Tov says Israel will cease as being a nation when they bring this about. Do you understand that? It's going to be a regional bloc. And yes, the Arabs can live there, the Palestinians can live there, the Israelis can live there, but it'll be a regional bloc. But in order for them to bring this about, they got to blow the whole thing up and kill everybody off and destroy all the Christians that are there in Syria. And make sure they destroy all the artifacts they have and all the ancient documents they have so that nobody can know anything about it. And what they don't destroy, they'll take into the catacombs of the Vatican and hide it from the rest of the world for the rest of your life. It's kind of like when the Aleppo Codex, one of the oldest known Hebraic versions of the scripture, made it secret track to Israel, and the Israeli government got a hold of it, and then many pages ended up being missing when it finally came to the public view many years later. And by the way, you remember where God says, or Moses says to God, they will say to me, Mashimo, what is his name? And God answers him, Asherah Adonai. Excuse me. He says to him, you shall say, Beyomer B'nai Yisrael, I am that I am. Do you know that in the Aleppo Codex, that one where those pages end up missing, do you know that this is exactly what Abraham called him as well? Yihayeh Asha Yihayeh. Abraham referred to our Heavenly Father as Yihayeh Asha Yihayeh. Interesting, isn't it? You know? Oh gosh. All right, let's get back. I get on these toots here, and I'm frustrated about what's happening here. All right, go back to Seymour's article here. To the dismay of many senior members of his national security team, Trump could not be swayed over the next 48 hours of intense briefings and decision-making. In a series of interviews, I learned of total disconnect between the president and many of his military advisors and intelligence officials, as well as the officers on the ground in the region who have an entirely different understanding of the nature of Syria's attack on Khan Sheikhoun. You know what the difference was? They knew that Russia had fully, in the English language, it communicated in details the entire plan to their American partners. Why? Because Russia did not want CIA operatives to be killed in the explosion. I was provided, this is Seymour Hersh saying, I was provided with evidence of that disconnect in the form of transcripts of real-time communications immediately following the Syrian attack of April the 4th. In an important pre-strike process known as deconfliction, U.S.-Russian officers routinely supply one another with advanced details of planned flight paths and target coordinates to ensure that there is no risk of collision or accidental encounter. The Russians speak on behalf of the Syrian military. This information is supplied daily to the American AWACS surveillance planes that monitor the flights once airborne. Deconfliction success and importance can be measured by the fact that there has yet to be one collision over even near miss among the high-powered supersonic American allied Russian Syrian fighter bombers. Okay? Russian and Syrian Air Force officers gave details, carefully planned flight path to and from Khan Sheikhoun on April the 4th directly in English to the deconfliction monitors aboard the AWACS plane, which was on patrol near the Turkish border 60 miles more to the north. The Syrian targeted Khan Sheikhoun, as shared with the American at Doha, was depicted as a two-story cinder block building in the northern part of town. Russian intelligence, which is shared when necessary with Syria and the U.S. as part of their joint fight against jihadist groups, and established that a high-level meeting of the jihadist leaders was taking place in the building, including representatives of Al-Harar, Al-Sham, and Al-Qaeda affiliates. And they want to say, yeah, and don't forget, Trump is changing out these guys in his administration. He's weeding out all the ones that will not go along with this greater project, this Israel with no borders. as Siman Tov said about. Let's pull back to Twitter. Listen again to Sergei Lavrov. Again, this is the exclusive BBC interview with Foreign Minister Lavrov. Credit to Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the unedited version. You won't see the full parts of this on Hard Talk at all. Stephen's not going to let you see what really is said.
We have much more legitimate questions in response to the only one question which we hear from the Western leaders, from the Western media. The question being, why did you do this? Why did you use chemical weapons in Britain? Why do you cover Assad? And so on and so forth. And then on the basis of these assertions, you say, if you're not right, will you punish us? It's a very interesting.
If you're Russia's chief diplomat, if Assad is deemed by the United States, Britain, France, and other countries to be using chemical weapons again, it is quite clear there will be a military response, and it will be a bigger one than we have just seen. What will that lead to? Before you say again, you have.
I want you to hear what he says here when he speaks about before you say again. Did you notice, though, Stephen says, if Assad uses the chemical weapons again, which is really not Assad. In other words, if they decide to stage another chemical weapons attack in Syria and then blame it on Assad, there's going to be a bigger response. Remember what I shared with you guys from Daniel's prophecy? Daniel 11? See? Tidings out of the east, now the north, they trouble him. He will go forth to make away many. In other words, kill a lot of them. All right? Let's watch what happens.
To prove that he did use chemical weapons. Can I give you a brief?
I'm just asking you a simple question because the world wants to know. If the US, to quote Nikki Haley again, is locked and loaded, and if they deem, never mind what you think, if they deem Assad to again be using chemical weapons, it is clear they will come up with a military response bigger than the one we've just seen. What will the Russian response to that be?
You know, I'm not in the guessing business. What I know is that when some time ago, the three Western countries who are leading this crazy campaign said, if Assad uses chemical weapons, then we will use force. You know, I believe that was a signal to the bad guys, including white helmets, to stage a provocation. Now, after they struck on the 14th of April, they say again, if you do this again, we will use force again. This is another invitation to the opposition, to the extremists, to resume fighting, which they did already. They tried to attack Damascus immediately after the strike. But my point is that when people say Russia is responsible for the obligations of Assad under the Chemical Weapons Convention, it's a very outrageous statement. We did it together with the United States.
A final question then on the diplomacy, then I want to move on to other matters. The US is pushing for a new UN security resolution today, which they believe is needed to send the international signal that Assad cannot be allowed to do this again. Will you work with the United States at the UN? Will you end vetoing every single resolution the US and its allies puts forward?
Not every single resolution. If you mean that they want to resume an investigating mechanism which is not transparent, which is not independent, and which takes decisions on the sentence itself without a verdict from the Security Council, then no, we cannot accept this.
You won't accept.
By the way,
right.
And if you know what I think. Please, 1 second still. I believe that the entire reason for this resolution is to make it look that if Russia and Syria agree to cooperate, which is impossible because of the substance, what they want to do is to make it look that we and Syria were bombed into negotiations. That's why in that resolution they insist that Syrian government must start negotiating. They forget that the main opposition group, which they all support, the so-called Syrian group, Nasser Hariri recently, the leader of this group, stated that the United States must continue to use force, not just in case of some chemical episodes, but against the Syrian government wherever and whenever the Syrian government opposes the opposition.
Some quick fire questions for you. First of them, do you believe that President Assad has won in this endless Syrian conflict?
It is not about winning. It is not about Assad or his opponents winning. It's about the Syrian people getting a break from this disastrous attack is required to help the Syrian army to...
The Russian foreign minister.
We're going to move on to the Skripal case real quick because I think that's very important in the interview here, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up tonight, guys. I see that we're having some problems with streaming here. Hopefully this will come up very good here for you in a little bit. Let me just find quickly the part there where he speaks about that because I forget exactly where that's at.
You claim that the Skripal attack was...
Yeah, we got it right here. Let me back up just a touch. This is the Skripal case here. I think it's very important that you follow what Sergei Lavrov says on this, foreign minister of Russia there. He really brings out evidence about this that I did not know about whatsoever myself. I think it's very important. He does talk about that the Russian grade that was made originally, it's actually, he calls it the Soviet made because it was actually made in the former Soviet Union, not actually in Russia itself. But he brings out key things that we know about already. But he also talks about how the Russia destroyed all their chemical weapons stockpile. They finished it in 2017 with the OPCW, monitoring it, and they signed off that all of Russia's chemical weapons have been fully destroyed. The United States was also agreeing with this to destroy all their chemical weapons, but as he'll bring out, they never do it. They always come up with excuses. And so America still is very heavily armed with chemical weapons, as is Israel as well. Now, in this, though, he speaks about how that the original gas that, this nerve agent that was developed has a very rapid evaporation rate. And then he challenges the evidence that they provided by saying 2 weeks later, you do your test and say it was a highly concentrated form. He said, because it evaporates so rapidly, there is no way you could have actually stated that. Listen to this.
Credibility is important, but trust is important. You are the Russian foreign minister. You claim that the Skripal attack was mounted by British intelligence services, who you, perhaps jokingly, I don't know, said are known for their license to kill. Do you expect that claim to be taken seriously?
Look, when we were told that there is no other credible explanation but to assume that it was Russia which highly likely poisoned Skripal, we said that there are other credible explanations.
Well, yours isn't credible.
Why? Why do you think so?
Have you got one shred of evidence to suggest British intelligence tried to kill Sergei Skripal?
Well, you know, there is an old Roman criteria, who is to benefit? And I believe the UK is grossly benefiting from the provocations, both in Syria and in the United Kingdom itself.
But hang on a minute.
And Britain is back on the stage of world politics,
but Russia,
in a very negative, in a very aggressive, in a very weird way. But
there's a deep inconsistency in your position, if I may say so, Foreign Minister. In this interview, you've been at pains to tell me Russia is utterly committed to all of the international commitments and conventions on chemical weapons, including supporting the work of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. You know better than I that the OPCW has run tests in 4 different labs on the nerve agent used in Salisbury. All of them have concluded that that was a Novichok agent in a highly pure form, as described by British.
There it is.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. First, the A234 agent in highly pure form, in high concentration, is already raises suspicions. Because this...
It came from Russia. It's quite clear it came from the former Soviet Union. You invented that particular nerve agent.
Look, Stephen, you're not factual. You may be hard talking, but you're not listening. This chemical substance, indeed, was invented in the Soviet Union. Then one of the inventors fled to the United States and made the formula public. And if you want to check before raising the issue, please do so. the United States patented this formula, and it was formally taken by the United States Special Services or the Army, I don't remember. But 8234 is a very light, I mean, it adds damage, it's seriously damage, a person kills him, but it evaporates very fast. And the sample taken 2 weeks after the event cannot, according by our scientists, to contain very high concentration.
I guess it's all a question of credibility.
And
Maybe credible in Russia, it's certainly not credible around the world. You know, you've had more than 100 diplomats expelled from more than 20 countries. It's clear where the consensus lies. Russia is seen as culpable.
Okay, if you want to finish the issue of the substance, on Saturday we presented a paper which contains literally the conclusion of the Swiss laboratory in the city of Spitz, which was one of the 4 laboratories, which did say that there was traces of 8234 very high concentration, but they also said that there was...
You trust the OPCW or you don't. It's quite simple. It seems you're now saying you don't trust the OPCW.
For a Brit, you have very bad manners. The Swiss laboratory report also said that...
I thought that was funny. He says, for a Brit, you have very bad manners. He does, because he keeps cutting him off. He doesn't let him finish. The point that he's making here is that there is no way possible for the Novichok agent in highly concentrated forms to still be present 2 weeks later, because it evaporates very rapidly. Now Stephen is trying to challenge him, saying, you don't trust the OPCW? Well, no, it's not the OPCW, I think, that he doesn't trust. But the British government also has the ability to plant that again and let it be extracted, or to give them a sample, kind of like what they did over in Khan Shaykhun. They never allowed them to go in, the OPCW, to actually get the samples. They said it was not safe for the OPCW to go in. Instead, the White Helmets provide them their chemical weapons analysis, and therefore they bomb everything based on that. Very troubling indeed what is happening over all this chemical weapons nonsense that's going on. And he also, Foreign Minister Lavrov brings out a very good point. The very man that invented this chemical weapon, this Novichok, fled to the United States. The United States patented this, and now they've had the control. We already know from 1999, the United States, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, had full control, full access to the very place where the Novichok agent was in the former Soviet Union. Now, again, just as we recap one more time, let's just look at everything. Eren Erdem, parliament member of the Turkish government, had all the documents of the arrests they made of the ISIS militants inside of Turkey transporting sarin gas in 2013. Eren Erdem, the MP member, not only him, there's 2 as a witness. You also have the justice minister as well of Turkey that came out and also spoke about what they had done. He accused then Prime Minister Erdogan, not President Erdogan, as being complicit in allowing these ISIS militants to leave with their sarin gas, with their bombs, and enter into the Syrian province there. And only within weeks later, this sarin gas attack in eastern Ghouta. Eren Erdem says the blood of the children of the 2013 attack was on the hands of the Turkish government, their own prime minister. Khan Shaykhun, Seymour Hersh, irrefutable evidence. Hillary Clinton involved, smuggling with the CIA, with, again, Erdogan of Turkey, the cheerleader of Donald Trump, for bombing Syria, and every single time, yet he supposedly had this big coup that happened in his country that the Americans were behind. But he's a cheerleader when you blow up Syria, isn't he? But again, that evidence unquestionably points to the CIA, Hillary Clinton, moving the sarin, the sarin gas from Libya to, again, Turkey. Same one that Aaron Erdem spoke about. He also spoke about here about the Khan Shaykhun and how that the U.S. and Russians were working together with complete complicit of all the information of the attack, the 500-pound bomb that would be used. And of course, as I said before, this is the little pothole that was caused by the so-called staged chemical attack that happened there. And yet Russia disclosed they'd given the Syrians a guided 500-pound bomb to drop on a 2-story cinder block building where 2 terrorist groups were meeting to take them out. Full knowledge of everything, flight plans, etc. And of course, this is what a 500-pound bomb does when it hits the road. How much more nonsense do we have to go through? How much more nonsense? Guys, listen, if you believe the truth, you want to know the truth, I'm here. I'll do everything I can to tell you the truth. If I make a mistake, I'll come back, I'll correct it. But right now, Siman Tov shared with us in the interview that we did with him just weeks ago that there is a plan in Israel to turn Israel into a borderless country. And as Siman Tov says, it will make Israel no longer exist as a nation. He said that they're working with the Arab partners, which includes Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and I forget the other nations that he mentioned, but it's basically the Gulf state nations that are involved in this. Iran stands in the way of that. Israel right now is saying that they have to take out Iran because they're concerned about Iran attacking Israel. And that may be very well true. I'm not saying that that's not true. Because you got to remember, Iran also knows what Saudi Arabia is up to. And this plan is not to benefit the Jewish people at all. As Siman Tov said, he said, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said, he's the man for the job. He says, what do I mean by that? He said, he will be the one that will bring the destruction on Israel that will kill 2/3 of our population. He said, but it's the only way that will drive Israel to her knees. The Jewish people returned home biblically for one reason, and that was to recognize her Messiah. And that's what's about to happen. If you want to stand and support this type of work, we do need your help. Believe me, I'm not one of those ministries where people are donating every day. They don't. You know, and God says in his word, you have not because you ask not. We love you. We want to tell you the truth. But I've dedicated my life to try to uncover these things. Also, tomorrow I'll be doing a biblical teaching as well. I want to share some things with you. I want to really get into some scriptures here with you as well. We'll share it here on DeNoon Institute as well. But I know some people also say I'm bad about not saying how you can help if you want to help. IsraeliNewsLive.org. You can visit our website. You can give there. If you're on YouTube after the video uploads, right above the subscribe button, you can also donate there. We also have an address in the United States as well as here in Europe. You won't see it at the end of this video here, but it's on most of the videos we've done here. It's in the last 30 days or so. You can just look up a regular video and you'll see our address. I'll put the address inside the description after we're finished here. Thank you for your support. Do pray for my wife. She's been having some difficulties here lately. We've got to get her restarted on this second round of treatment there just so we can make sure we get this stuff completely killed in her. You know, she does need your prayers. We love you. God bless you. And thank you for watching. So, in a world, of course, of ancient.